If you are new here, I'm so happy to have you. My viewers and subscribers, welcome back to the channel. So for today's video, we're going to be covering about the 14th Amendment, Section 3 of the U.S. Constitution, but we're also going to be covering a multitude of other topics relating to this main topic of the 14th Amendment, Section 3. We're going to talk about Donald Trump's future. We're going to talk about the 2024 presidential election. We're going to talk about the Supreme Court. We're going to talk about the ballot issues. We're going to talk about Democratic and Republican states and how they're going to respond, including battleground states. And overall, we're going to ask the main question of today's video: is Donald Trump going to be disqualified for run in the 2024 presidential election? I think this is going to be the most interesting and most important reading that we have ever done. And I really hope you guys do like this video. So don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon, because it really does help out the channel really a lot. And I know I haven't been on lately, and that's particularly because I'm still trying to find my rhythm. And so I'm not away from YouTube. I'm officially back. I'm just trying to find my rhythm. It's really what I'm trying to find. But anyway, without further ado, let's just get right into it. So as you can see, the moon in the background on that side, it is the full moon today. It is the blue moon. So if you have not done your manifestation skill, be careful what you think, because what you think shall come to fruition. So just make sure you think positive things, and make sure you make the universe know exactly what it is that you want. So let's do this, shall we? Okay, so today recording is being recorded on August 30th, 2023 at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's around 1 o'clock. It's early one because I had to do a couple retakes. But without further ado, let's just do this. Here are some quick disclaimers on your screen right now. Feel free to pause the video if you are interested in reading them on your own time. This video is just for entertainment purposes only and for education purposes only as well, so just keep that in mind as well. Here are some last minute disclaimers. I'll have another disclaimer. I always forget. It's been a while. So yeah, they're all the disclaimers. We're officially done. So now, in order for us to really understand the full context of what we're going to be covering today and what Donald Trump is going through right now, is what is the Section 3 of the 14th Amendment? Now, a lot of you guys know the 14th Amendment came about right after the Civil War and the freedom of slaves to be full-blown U.S. citizens, and this is what this entails. Now, I'm not exactly sure what one kind of those three amendments, but I kind of get confused of the three, so I'm not going to confuse you. But we're going to talk about what the Section 3 of the 14th Amendment entail and why that may affect Donald Trump. So we have here Section 3 of the 14th Amendment prohibits anyone who has previously taken an oath of office, that is, most current and former public officials, from holding public office if they have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the United States, and that is stated in the U.S. Constitution. So how does this apply to Donald Trump? Well, simple. January 6th is all that you need to know. And the trying of repeated lies about the 2020 election that he won over Joe Biden. So, let's just begin. Again, like I said, guys, if you want to jump into certain timestamps in this video, just feel free to check the description and you can jump to the certain question that you want to cover. But I highly recommend, because this video is so interesting in itself, that we should just stay on par and just watch every question, because every question may give you more context than just say jumping around, not really understanding the full picture. Okay. All right. So the first question we're going to ask is: will Donald Trump be disqualified from running to become the 47th president in the upcoming 2024 presidential election? Okay, so I just had to pause the video for a second just to cleanse these tarot cards. I forgot to do that before I went live. And then I also managed to find my homemade tarot deck, which I'm going to remake it into more of election, Congress, U.S. Senate type cards. As of right now, we'll make it do what we got. So the way these cards work, the way I designed them, that if something's upright, reverse, it means you turn it. So that's what this means. So that's really all that it is. So, yeah. So anyway, we're going to read that in a second. We're going to gather some more information. Again, like I said, I am not a legal expert. This video is just for entertainment purposes only. So, depending on how this video goes, we might have a part 2. So, I'm not really sure what to expect. So, we'll see. We'll really see is what we're going to do. Okay, anyway, beside the point, let's begin. So, the left card here, we have the star card. This is the former United States election. This is 2024. This is 2020 with the election of Joe Biden and the defeat of Donald Trump, right? The reason why this card is reversed now, this card really recognizes for me in the past when I read on and used this card, it recognizes to me as the 13 original colonies, hence the circle of the stars, and one major one, which is the United States as a whole. The card is reversed, and because the card is reversed, it talks about undemocratic issues facing the nation and the potentiality that America may have to choose between democracy or a new ideology, right? And the card that comes in the center is the Three of Cups. The Three of Cups. And the fourth cup is imaginary. It is invisible. It's possible, but it's not. And when I say that, I'm not talking about the possibility of Trump being disqualified. Because if you do the math here, right, Donald Trump ran back in what? He ran in 2000. Yeah, he ran in 2000. He ran in 2016. He won the 2016. He lost the 2020. And I was trying to run for a fourth term. I mean, not a fourth term, but a fourth time. And that's the main question to today's video is that is this going to come to fruition or is this just imaginary? Is this just a political theater, so to speak? And what it's really suggesting is we're in this limbo state right now where the possibilities are endless, which is why this video is telling you not predicting the future, but the possibilities that we could face had we were to go down this route and Trump was to be disqualified via the 14th Amendment, Section 3. And that's really what the card honed in on. Oh my God, I can't speak today, the allergies. But that's really what that card holds on to. Now, the next card that follows in the yes or no is the Page of Wands. And the Page of Wands is reversed. And this color here, the guy is orange. And that normally indicates to me as Donald Trump, because Donald Trump is oftentimes more than not is described as a guy who has an orange tint or orange color or orange tint, whatever you want to call it. Donald Trump is orange. Because he comes through at the Page of Wands, the wand is normally like if you were to see like the older people back in the olden days, or like even the modern day older people, we have elders, they normally have a cane or whatnot. Think of that. And normally they are superiority. They are what came first. It's for first, right? It's for first. And what this is indicating to me that Donald Trump, the cane, so to speak, symbolizes, hierarchy. It symbolizes superiority or leadership movement. It's reversed, which kind of doesn't really indicate any sort of leadership. Maybe that means maybe the RNC removes him from the ballot. Maybe they tell Republicans to go vote for somebody else, regardless. But whatever it is, Donald Trump doesn't have the leadership ability that he's required of him in order to make sure that the 47th president isn't him. Right? He doesn't have that leadership quality that would make him the 47th president. And that's why the card is coming through as reverse. Now, the clarifiers, these are the clarifier cards, which is the one that I made. We have the Republicans lose. Right? It was originally this one reversed, and you just flip it over. We have the Republicans lose, which is the Democrats here, right? We have older voters. They are reversed. What's reversed is retail industry, minimum wage, food supply, poor working condition, which is true because as long as Biden, in order for Biden to win, he needs to take on worker and labor issues in order to help the average day American. Most Americans nowadays are struggling. And so this will really help in the long run. We do have here disability rights. They are reversed. So we have the electoral college margin, right? Look at the electoral college. Look at the top. 0 to 13 electoral votes, 180 to 250 seats, 61, 37 to Senate seats that are independent. So I found it to be really interesting that if what it's saying here is that if Donald Trump was to win and he was known as an indicted criminal, so to speak, he would basically lose by a big margin. It might also indicate here the reason why he might only get 0 to 13 seats or electoral votes might simply be on the simple fact that maybe certain states may refuse to be constantly ratify the fact that Donald Trump might be disqualified and cannot be put on the ballot, and they actually might refute that and not put him on the ballot. Also, it's also hinting at the fact that possibility-wise, Donald Trump could be writing candidate, which is where a voter in the U.S. just writes in who they want if the candidate does not show up on the ballot, and they can write their name in. And if there's enough of them in terms of that vote, it goes to that candidate, regardless of whether or not they won the ballot. So that could be a multitude of things that could indicate why Donald Trump gets 0 to 13 electoral college votes. We do have vice president. Okay, so vice president is very key here. You know how this is Biden, right? It's for first. This is talking about the Republican Party. I think in some way Donald Trump is definitely going to nominate a woman woman as his running mate. And so that might be really indicating. And what might be even more indicating the fact that this person has brown hair. And the only person who is possibly a good choice who has brown hair might be Nikki Haley. Now, if you want to go with someone who's more of a diehard extremist, more of a loyal type representative for him, he would go with Lauren Boebert, which would be more disastrous than Nikki Haley would be. We do have Trouble's leader, right? Which makes a lot of sense. Donald Trump is a Trouble's leader, whether you want to admit or not, he was the former U.S. president. We do have here, when it says here, whether or not Trump is going to be disqualified, it does specify in the 3 original cards using the right-of-way tarot. It specifies here that Donald Trump does not have the capability to lead a nation again. He does not have the ability, which also possibly might also be indicating, now that I realize what I said earlier, is that it's because he doesn't have the leadership capability. It might not be that Donald Trump can't lead. It might be that he physically cannot be allowed to lead. And it might be indicating that Donald Trump will be disqualified. Again, this video is just for entertainment purposes only. So that would make a lot of sense why the results are undecided. It might be that Donald Trump is later on removed off the ballot, and now the RNC or the Republican nomination needs to now go find a new candidate to replace Donald Trump on the ballot. And that might be a major issue, which is why the results will be undecided. Or because you don't really know, because Donald Trump could be disqualified, he could not, and the results are just up in the air, which is why I'm not even doing any tarot cards on the 2024 presidential election, because everything's so up in the air. Like anything can go either way at this point. And we do have the what to call it? We do have the upright leaning Republican. So as of right now, what is he saying here that, even though the results are undecided, it does lean Republican. The U.S. House or the Congress, which would make a lot of sense because considering the fact that, this incites the Republican Party's base to go out and vote against Donald Trump or vote against the Republican Party. And because they incite a lot of those voters, at the same time, it also angers the voters. They almost feel like their candidate has been taken away from them. Those candidates have been stripped from them and that they don't have representation. So those people are going to go out in full force that you've never seen it before. And so we might be looking on the cups of a U.S. election that has the highest turnout in any election in history, including surpassing the previous one in 2020. And so that would be really interesting to see. But as of right now, saying at this very moment, the Republicans still lead in the possibilities of taking back the White House in 2024, even if Donald Trump is disqualified from the race. And that is on the simple constitute that because most Democrats come out and vote against Donald Trump, because Donald Trump is no longer on the ballot, it will sway in the Republican favor because a lot of those Democrats who are against Trump may not come out against another candidate because they don't see Trump in that person. The only way the Democrats are able to incite those voters, they need to make those new Republican nominee appear as if the new Donald Trump who's trying to take over. And so that would be the only way for the Democratic Party going forward to maintain onto the White House and maintain control. So this is going to be really interesting. So the next question that we're going to ask is, how will the heavily Democratic and Republican states respond if Donald Trump is to be disqualified from the 2024 presidential election? The reason why we're going to ask the question is, even though a lot of Democratic states, if Donald Trump were to be, let's say, quote, disqualified from the 2024 election, there would be no hesitation to remove him off the U.S. ballot. Now, when it comes to the heavily Republican states, they'd be more reluctant to remove him off the ballot on the simple basis of maybe the electability chances. It could be possibility of loyalty. It could be blackmail. It could be a multitude of different things that will make it so that Donald Trump may not be disqualified in certain states or regions of the U.S. Of the country. And so this will really dramatically alter, to say for example, will really alter how the 2024 presidential election is going to go. Because just say, for example, he's disqualified in the state of California, right? And Donald Trump is not on the ballot, which will naturally indicate okay, so there's going to be no Republican enthusiasm unless they come out and write him in the ballot regardless. Or it might also be the fact at the same point, Donald Trump has no chance of winning the state of California because he is not on that ballot, which would basically solidify states like California, Washington, Oregon to the Democratic Party. Now, for the same thing for the Republican states, they will allow Donald Trump to make sure he wins those states. Because they'll say, Donald Trump was to be removed and there's no GOP nominee to replace Donald Trump. Well, then guess what? North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska will go to the Democratic Party candidate, basically handing Biden a landslide victory. And so there's a whole multitude of different things that could possibly happen with the Democrats and the Republican Party states and the response to Trump possibly being disqualified from the 2024 presidential election. It's also possible at the same time, Republican states may remove Biden off the ballot. So there's a whole multitude of different things. And, at the same point, let's say, for example, the Democrats and the Republican, the Democratic states remove him off the ballot and the Republican states keep him on the ballot. Guess what? The ones that remove him off the ballot are going to go through a court case, a case that's going to end up in the Supreme Court. And the same thing with those who refuse to constitutionally amend the ballot to not put Donald Trump on the ballot. And that will also go to the Supreme Court. And that's why the final question is going to cover the Supreme Court, because in the end, whether or not Donald Trump is disqualified, it's going to determine whether or not the Supreme Court has the checks and balances and the power to oversee the executive branch and to keep the executive branch in check. Otherwise, it just at this point it's a dictatorship. And so that would be really interesting to see how the Supreme Court will decide this. But again, we're going to answer every question and we're going to land on the last piece, the last little piece of context that we need for this video. But yeah, so anyway, let's begin. So how will the heavily Democratic and Republican states respond if Donald Trump is to be disqualified? So the way we're going to do this, where's my color deck? So the way that we're going to do this, we are going to use Uno. And Uno is going to be a very important key player because it has certain color nodes. And the color nodes are going to indicate the Democrats and the Republican Party and how they're going to respond to the news of Donald Trump being disqualified. So we can kind of get an idea of what is happening in specific states. Now, I'm hopefully getting more of a detailed description, but we'll just see what we got. Then the Democrats or the Republican Party. Of course, they're below. Okay, all right, whatever. So +2 is the Democrats, and and then 7 is the Republicans. Okay, so how would the heavily Democratic and Republican states respond if Donald Trump is to be disqualified from the 2024 presidential election? Well, we have the Democratic Party here, and we have the Republican Party here. Right, so this is the Democrat states, these are the Republican states, these are the states that always go to the Republican Party, these are the states that always go to the Democratic Party, okay? So, for example, like heavily Democratic states would be like the state of New York, Vermont, Rhode Island, California, Washington, Massachusetts, stuff like that. But the Republicans, it would be like Wyoming, North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Missouri, stuff like that. Those are heavily Republican states, stuff like that. Okay, so let's see how the Democratic states will respond to the news that Donald Trump is to be disqualified and has to be removed off the ballot. So we have the Knight of Wands. It's basically saying, see ya. Some of the states are going to respond to saying, see ya, you're off the ballot, we're not putting you on. So certain states will abide by it. There's going to be no issues with that. So there's no issue. However, we do have the Sun card reverse. And the Sun card reverse is indicating to me here by the Death card, which means rebirth. So the thing that I want to know is why is the Sun card reverse indicating a rebirth of the Democratic Party? Now that might also indicate to me it might be the symbolization of, Donald Trump is off the ballot. If I can't vote for Donald Trump, I want to vote for the next candidate. It could be Robert F. K. RFK, I gotta really remember saying that. But it's possible that RFK might be trying to portray himself in those Democratic states because there's no Republican on the ballot. He might put himself on the ballot, which will be very interesting to really see. So the rebirth could be the split between the Democratic Party identity, but also the fact as well is the RFK. Well, if let's say Joe Biden wins majority of the Democratic vote, and even though RFK is a Democrat, he might put himself as the Republican new nominee to become the replacement in Democratic heavily states. So I would not put it past RFK that he might challenge Biden in the Electoral College, even if he does not win the Democratic nomination for the presidency of the United States. And so that would be really interesting. That might be what the indicating card here is for the rebirth. It might be the rebirth of the Democratic Party. It also might be the idealization of the shift that we experienced in the 1960s, where the Democrats and the Republican Party swapped. At the same point, what is also indicated to me here that there's going to be another switch, but not between the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. It's going to be the dominant in what their ideology and what they represent. And so there's going to be some sort of swap here. I'm not saying the Democratic Party is going to go the way the Republicans are at right now, but what I am indicating is that there's going to be some massive changes going forward. And that might be because maybe Joe Biden might realize and say, hey, listen, we are actually not a democratic country. We are actually a republic, but we are going to work towards democracy. That could be something as simple as that. So that could be possible. In the end, though, in the final outcome card and how they're going to respond, the Democrat states, to the possibility of Donald Trump being disqualified and has to be removed off the ballot. A lot of those states are going to struggle a little bit, but not really. It feels like, the next Republican president might punish those states, if you know what I mean. They might deny them ability to have environmental funding or stuff like that. If they're to say there was a catastrophic disaster, it might be outright denied. So there's that. But besides that, I don't really see any sort of struggle with the Democratic Party's approach in Democratic states when removing Donald Trump off the U.S. ballot, just to say that he was disqualified by the 14th Amendment, Section 3. Now, as for the Republican side, let's see what the Republican side has here. So the first card that we have here is the Queen of Swords. And the Queen of Swords reversed normally indicates to me Joe Biden, Kamala Harris winning the election. It's reversed. And what this reversal means for me is just telling me that the Supreme Court, there's another seat that becomes vacant in the Supreme Court. So around this time for the Republican, heavily Republican states, I do see a vacancy in the Supreme Court around this time that to say they were to take it to the Supreme Court, there's a vacancy there. And that is what this card is being indicated here, that there's a vacancy, which means that there's almost an even split between the Democrats and the Republicans. And that could possibly mean that a Republican is lost. And so now it's 3-3 instead of 7. Do they have 7? I think they have 7 people on the Supreme Court. Yeah, they do. They have 7. They have an odd number, so it's 7. But anyway, besides the point, they're going to be even, pretty much. Now, the middle card here, first, is we have the star card reverse. And now this is like my 13 colonies, the democracy, people being allowed to vote. It's reversed. And the reason why that is reversed, it is also be adamantly indicating the original 13 colonies intent. It's to allow certain groups of people to vote while alienating others and preventing them from voting. The same way it happened back in the early days of the U.S. colony. However, over time, people in the United States have incorporated together and each other to be able to go out and vote and make their voices heard, regardless of protected classes. We do have here on top of this, we do have the Ace of Wands. An Ace of Wands card normally means indicating power, control, leadership, right? And this is, again, for the Republican Party. And the reason for that is that even though there's a vacancy in the Supreme Court at the moment in which this case is being held in the Supreme Court, if Donald Trump were to be disqualified, I do see that there is going to be a Supreme Court case in the Republican. That's without a doubt. But we do have the Ace of Wands. Was basically saying that even if by the time the decision is being made, because there's going to be a deadlock in the Supreme Court, the election should be pretty much over by that point. And because the election might be over by that point, it's indicating that regardless of what happens, those states are locked down for the Republican Party only. We do have here, though, in the end. Okay. Ooh, okay, interesting. Interesting. So how I talked about on the Democratic state, I just see the possibility of a rising of RFK and a possibility that he might step up to the challenge if the state Donald Trump were to be removed from the Democratic states, like New York, for example. He would put his name on the ballot to challenge Joe Biden in the state of New York. So it'd be basically two Democrats off against each other, whereas other states might be the exact opposite. So it's going to be really interesting to see how this election comes out. It's going to be any election like we have never seen before, surreal. Like you thought 2020 was something, this would be like blown out of the water. So now for the Republican states, in terms of final outcome card here, we do have the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court, even though it favors the Democrats, which means that there's an open vacancy, which means Joe Biden is going to appoint another Democrat to the Supreme Court justice. But because the Republicans are still heavily favored in the Supreme Court, it will end up, not being decided by the Supreme Court because of vacancy, which basically means it's a deadlock of partisan divide in the Supreme Court because of partisanship. So we do have here, in the end, it will lean Democrat in the future, but as of right now, it is saying here that regardless of all that, the Republicans, even if they are off the ballot in certain states because of Donald Trump, they will put money into a third party. And this will be the rise of a third party, which means actually now it's officially time for me to now do a video on it because I have been talking about it on my channel for a while where I said we're going to have an independent third party candidate, specifically for president and win the presidency. This might be the next step to doing that. This decade, we're not going to have a third party candidate. You might have a little bit more of an increase in the next election, 2028. But come the 30s, we're going to have a full-blown third-party rise up in the United States. This is the beginning of that. So it does say here, though, even though the Republicans are not going to be able to challenge the Democrats in every U.S. state because Donald Trump is disqualified, it does show that the Republicans have been taking initiative to make sure that if they are not able to compete with Democrats in certain states, that is completely fine with them, because what they are going to do is they are going to prop up third parties to try to get them to take on Joe Biden. So if a Republican cannot take them on, they will prop up third party initiative, possibly RFK. It might also be that maybe they pop up RFK in certain states and a pop up of a Republican candidate in certain states, or maybe another. Whatever they really are doing, there's going to be a third party here regardless for both parties, which will be why I'm saying here that the ideology changes for both political parties. So this will be a very defining moment for the U.S. in general. And we do have the Trump card reversed, and this is my Donald Trump card. Donald Trump and his supporters. It's reversed. What this tells me here is that Donald Trump, because he's not on the ballot, the Republican Party loses that enthusiasm. They lose that loyalty aspect that they desperately need in the 2024 election. And because of that, they're basically splitting their vote into multiple different regions. And because they're splitting their vote, for example, think of it this way. Because the Republican Party is investing money in the third party vote because they can't compete in certain states, for example, just say a Republican who's uneducated on any other political party now is being told to vote for this political party, and he realizing the research on that political party, realizing, hey, I'm not a Republican. I identify as a constitutionalist. Stuff like that. The realization that, hey, I'm not going to vote for the Republican. I'm going to vote for the constitutionalist. So in a way, even though it's helped the Republican Party short term, it's going to hurt them long term because they're going to lose that key voting base. Because it's going to get that awakening, so to speak, to those voters and say, hey, I don't always need to vote for the two-party system. I can make my voice heard by voting for what I want to vote for. And that would be very important nonetheless. So the next question that we're going to ask now is, how would tossup or battleground states respond if Donald Trump was to be disqualified from the 2024 presidential election? So we're going to cover that in today's video. Is how would Donald Trump, how would tossup states like Ohio, Iowa, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Minnesota, Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona, Nevada, Oregon, Alaska, Virginia, North Carolina, Florida, Georgia, Texas, New Hampshire, Maine, even Rhode Island, how are those states going to respond if Donald Trump was to be disqualified from the 2024 presidential election? Now, we already recently covered in a previous video. We talked about how the Democrats and the Republican Party response in their respective states, if Donald Trump was to be disqualified, how would they respond? Now, we're going to ask this now, how would the battleground states respond to Donald Trump being disqualified? Now, that would really alter the result, because depending on how they respond, their allocation of their electoral college votes will determine presidency in 2024. So we have a lost-it victory here in the past, a lost-it victory. And this is being indicated by the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. And the reason why it is that certain states that the Democratic Party were not able to get their hands on and winning will be able to have a higher viability of a shot of winning at the state or the electoral vote in 2024 compared to 2020 and all the election previous beyond that. And so what is being shown to me that states like Ohio, Iowa, that were previously unheard of, were, used to go to Barack Obama as far back as 2012 and has been in the Republican Party column since, is indicating here in the reverse column that the Democratic Party has a viable shot this time of winning those states back. And that's what's really important for the Democratic Party. However, the central card here is a rebirth, a death, right? How a toss-up of battleground states respond if Donald Trump was to be disqualified from the 2024 presidential election results, if he was to be off the ballot. It is talking about the rebirth, a death of something between the toss-up and the battleground states. And what that is really indicating to me here is indicating that around Halloween, around those times, so I guess October of this month or next year, the October of 2023 or the October 2024, which is probably what I should have said, but I didn't. The death card is indicating here something changing in the race. Maybe possibly they announced that they're actually going to go ahead and disqualify him from the race, which is the October surprise. The October surprise normally happens around the time of the U.S. election, and that normally alters the U.S. race. And so that's what the death card is indicating here, a change, a shake-up, something new, a rebirth, maybe a revitalization, maybe this October they say that Donald Trump is to be disqualified, and then next October Donald Trump comes down and says, well, I may be in jail, but if you vote for me and write me in on the ballot, I could come back and be your president, regardless if I'm on the ballot or not. And that's what's also be indicated here as well. There's a major shake-up happening in the U.S. prior to the 2024 presidential election, which means that this election that's coming is going to be the hardest election to ever read on psychically, because we won't really know, because there's so many things coming at you. You got to hope you really know what you're reading and get rid of those distractions, because so many things are in fluctuation. It's going to alter and change, which is why I'm not covering the topic as much. We do have here, though, we do have the United Cup. As it comes to the battleground and toss-up states, they're going to remove, most of them are going to remove Donald Trump off the ballot. States like Texas, Ohio, and Iowa might have a lot more difficulty removing them, but regardless, Joe Biden will have a higher shot of winning those states than he did back in 2020 and Hillary Clinton back in 2016. And so it does show in a way that, the Democrats do have the momentum in the toss-up and battleground states. So that's really interesting to see nonetheless. It's not as complex or as complicated. I just say the Democratic states or the Republican states. So this doesn't seem to be as complicated. It seems to be more straightforward, which is good news. So the next question that we're going to ask is, will there be a massive writing campaign effort to try to get people to write down some name on their ballot when they cast their vote for the presidency in 2024? Now, if you don't know what, you normally occasionally just vote for the Democrats or the Republican Party in the 2024 presidential election or any election thereof, you actually have the option as a voter to write in your desired candidate in the presidency box. You don't really have to be stuck between the two options of Democrat or Republican. You can always put in your candidate as well. And so we're going to talk about this. Is it possible, even if Donald Trump is disqualified and not allowed to be on the ballot, that does not also constitute, and there is a loophole in the Constitution that does not specify that writing candidates who are not on the ballot or is disqualified cannot be on the ballot, regardless of whether they are a writing candidate or a candidate specifically put there and represented by the party in which they currently hold or elected them in nomination-wise. So we're going to ask that question. Okay, so what is showing to me here is that even if Donald Trump is able to do that, and Donald Trump wants to do this, he will be classified as a third party regardless, because he is not representing a political party nonetheless. Unless the Republicans do not put out forth someone and you just say, hey, all Republicans go out and write this person's name in, then he's not qualified as a third party. But because Donald Trump will go out and say, hey, listen, go write my name in the ballot so I could win the 2024 election, he's classified as a third party candidate. And so he will actually have the highest possibility of showing the best performance for a third party since Teddy Roosevelt back in 1912, I believe, 1912, 1916. One of those two presidential elections, it's one of the two. But besides the point, Donald Trump will do very well in the election. He will have about 30% of the vote, which is pretty good for a third party candidate who is not even on the ballot. Now, this is again like hypothetical if Donald Trump was to be disqualified and he were to tell people in a massive ad campaign, try to get him to have his name written down. So we do have the 5 of Wands reversed. This is the first card that came up. And what I'm seeing here is not as much fighting and discontent as it recently been in the past. There's not a lot of anger or hate. There seemed to be he lost a lot of loyalty and support. But his loyalty base still remains a heavy 30%. What's really alter certain races, Ross Perot won back in the 1990s. He did very well. He made certain states like Texas and New York very competitive. And so, that would make a lot of sense for this as well. Donald Trump winning 30% of the national popular vote will put a lot of states into the competitive column. Even then, Donald Trump could still win a significant chunk, or even not as significant, but he could win a lot of states just with 30% of the popular vote. Just say there was a third of Republican and Democrat, or Democrats like Joe Biden, there's no sort of split and there's a full unity behind Joe Biden. Joe Biden is going to win in a landslide, regardless of what it is. But again, it's like how it plays out. The election is going to be scrambled. We really don't even know how it's going to go. So we do have the Ace of Swords. So when I asked, will there be a massive writing campaign? The card comes in the Ace of Swords. Yes, there will be. And now a lot of you guys have remembered in the past, we had the current incumbent being dethroned by the sword, being removed from office, which is the original intent of Donald Trump to remove Joe Biden from the presidency and install himself back into the presidency as the 47th president. However, that's not the case. We do have the full card. There's only so far that you can go in a writing campaign. Because let's say, for example, because a lot of Donald Trump's voting base is very uneducated. Because of that, a lot of them do not know how to spell. If you get them to write down your name, just say you get 45% of the popular vote from writing campaigns. But because those 15% don't know how to properly write your name, or they accidentally screw up the R or the U or the M or the P or the Donald, whatever, or they call him the Big Don or whatever they call him, or the God or leader, whatever you want to call him. If they don't write down Donald Trump's full name correctly, like Donald John Trump, he may not even be allocated their votes because of some sort of minor screw up. Think about the ballots when if you messed up the little circle that you have to dot in a circle and submit your ballot, just screw up somebody's name, chances are they're not going to play guessing. They're not going to call you, say, who did you vote for? You mean Donald Trump? They're not going to do that. Your vote's just going to be disqualified. It might just be thrown out. So Donald Trump might win 45%, but only garner 30% with accuracy. So in a way, his uneducated base may actually backfire with the writing campaign. And we do have the fugitive. The reason why I get 30% is I see the number 3 and I see 30%. So if anything, Donald Trump either win 30 electoral college votes in the upcoming election if he was to run in as a third party and was to be disqualified. He will win around 30% of the electoral college, but I don't really know what that number will equate to. Or he will either win 30% in the popular vote. So after doing the 30% of the total electoral college votes, which would be about 538, 30% of that total electoral college will put Donald Trump at 161 electoral votes. So, that's a big chunk for a third party or writing candidate to get 160, 1 second. 161.4. That's 30% of the 538 electoral votes Donald Trump would get. So that's a big chunk for a writing candidate, but not enough to give him the presidency. He still needs, 270 in order to become president-elect or re-elected president. In that case, even if you win 30% of the electoral college, it's only 161 electoral votes. That would probably be the high point for Donald Trump as like a writing candidate. We do have the Emperor's Card of Birth, and the Emperor's Card of Birth is a saying history and the world and universe is not on Donald Trump's side. So when it comes to would there be a massive effort campaign to try to get people to put Donald Trump on the ballot by writing his name in, it is saying here, yes, there is going to be a massive campaign if they were to go this route. Will Donald Trump get a significant chunk of the electoral college just on simple writing campaigns? Yes, he will. He would get around 161 to 30 electoral votes, but he will gain around 30% of the popular vote. And because of all of that, he won't be able to win the presidency on that alone. He still needs about 15% more in order to have some sort of shot at winning the presidency. And because just say somebody and all those loyalty and supporters, like I said, go out and vote for him, but they screw up on his name or some capacity or write Donald Trump and not Donald John Trump, and they screw up, guess what? Those votes are disqualified or not allowed to be processed through because they messed up. So stuff like that could really hinder Donald Trump's ability to maintain a huge chunk of his supporting base because a lot of them are uneducated and know how to properly spell. Again, the Democrats would have the same issue had it just been Pete Buttigieg instead of Biden. Biden is very easy to spell. When it comes to Buttigieg, oh hell no. The Democrats would probably lose just on simple writing his name. But regardless, nonetheless, Donald Trump, when it comes to stuff like that, in terms of writing campaign, he would do significantly well, but not well enough to win him the presidency. So the next question that we're going to ask is, what is the 2024 election going to look like if he was or wasn't on the ballot? So we're going to look through possible outcomes. We've covered a lot of information in this video already. I'm like mind blown by all of this. What is the 2024 presidential election going to look like if Donald Trump was not disqualified from the 2024 presidential election? What would it look like? Okay, so the first thing I heard on my right ear is I heard that Donald Trump has a high probability of winning the next election on the simple basis that Democrats are not as enthusiastic as they were back in 2020. They need something to push them towards that. So in terms of that, Donald Trump has a higher probability if nothing was to remove him from the disqualification. As of right now, if the election was held today, Donald Trump will win the election. Now, that would change, that would change down the line. Like I said, it's fluctuating, things are changing. So this is only if the election was held today. So if Donald Trump was to be disqualified from the 2024 presidential election, how would that election look like in 2024? The Republicans would not win. And that is because even though they have the high probability and the Republicans are leaning in terms of support for the Republicans to be able to take back the White House, because it's in the past, and the card here is the page of wands reversed. Like I said, leadership. The card also comes up for Donald Trump early in the first video. This card is reversed, and that is indicating to me that Donald Trump is not the leader. And because he is not the leader, because the wand is reversed, because old people have canes, right? They are the superiority. They are the leading people. They are what came first, Donald Trump came first before Biden did. And so, it's reversed. And what's indicating to me, because Donald Trump does not have the capability to lead, that automatically tells me that in this outcome, he is disqualified, right? And in the right card here, we have counting of the votes, finding information, rebuilding up that electoral college wall for the Republicans. That is the future card here. And so what is the 2024 presidential election going to look like? They're still counting. They don't actually even know who the winner is, if Donald Trump were to be disqualified, because we don't really know who's going to be president. And so as of right now, if the election was held today, we have no idea who's going to be the president, which makes a lot of sense why the information is kind of mumble jumble. So what we're going to do is later down in the year, we're going to touch back onto all of the questions, and we're going to try to figure out, okay, do we get more information? So hold on to that, because, like this video, don't forget to like and subscribe, but also at the same time, comment in the description below. I will remind you when a new video like this is uploaded, I can remind you, say, hey, check this out. We might have more information, stuff like that. But as of right now, we don't actually know who's going to be the winner. But if the election was held today and Donald Trump was not to be disqualified, he will win outright. He will beat Joe Biden. So, yeah. We do have one more question to keep that in mind. So the last question that we're going to ask is, what does the Supreme Court role play in whether or not Donald Trump is disqualified or not? Besides the point, what does the Supreme Court role play in whether or not Donald Trump is disqualified or not? But when it comes down to of it all, just say, Donald Trump was to be disqualified, right? States like New York and California would outright remove him because why put him on the ballot? Like, it's constitutionally a law via Section 14. Amendment 14, Section 3 is the constitutional law. So they have to abide by that, by the federal aspect. And so really what it will come down to, they will remove him, and then the Republicans will backlash by suing them to try to bring it back up to the Supreme Court. And vice versa, the Republican states legislator in certain states may refuse to abide by the constitutional law to disqualify him from their ballot in their own state, and therefore that would also go to the Supreme Court. And so the Supreme Court, in the end, will be the final say in whether or not Donald Trump will be disqualified. Now the thing is about Donald Trump is Donald Trump appointed the 3 of the new justices on the Supreme Court. We have Brett Kavanaugh, we have Amy Coney Barrett, and there's some other white guy. Besides the point, he nominated 3 justices, right? So the Republicans having a domination in the Supreme Court as of right now. And so, the Supreme Court was designed to be a check and balance on the executive branch to make sure that they don't overstep in terms of their own power. The thing is, Donald Trump has loyalists inside the Supreme Court. Now, they're a lifetime appointee, which means that they cannot be removed unless there's a law that puts in place that can remove them forcibly or to impeach them. We have never impeached a Supreme Court justice, so we don't even know the legalities of that aspect. But just to say, in terms of the Supreme Court and what kind of role it will specifically play with the 14th Amendment in Section 3, at the same time, if they were to just say allow Donald Trump to still be on the ballot, even though he's specifically denied the ability to be on the U.S. ballot. Amendment 14, Section 3, because of all that, at the same exact point, if they were to allow him to be on the ballot, the Supreme Court had gave away their power, basically saying that the U.S. president is above the U.S. Constitution, which means that they cannot be held accountable for any action, which means at that point, it's a dictatorship, and the Supreme Court's ability to check and balance the executive branch has been eliminated. So the thing is here, what matters more to the Supreme Court justices? Having power over the executive branch, or basically relinquishing their power because of their loyalty to the person who they are giving their power away from to? So the question is, it's not really come down to, whether or not Trump is there. It's really come down to whether or not those Supreme Court justices, even appointed by Donald Trump, will be reluctant whether or not to give away their power so easily. That will be the key cornerstone, because without the Supreme Court, there are those checks and balances on the executive branch, which basically means they are unlimited, they are untouched, they cannot be challenged. That's what's so important about the Supreme Court, is what matters more to the Supreme Court justice. Is it power, or is it temporary political loyalty? That's what we're going to figure out right now. We have here leans Republican, right? We know the Supreme Court leans Republican. That's without a doubt, like I said before. We do have to hear the landslide. It's reverse. Republicans flip the White House. We have here the Electoral College is reverse, which means with trials. Salem false accusation, black or white magic, biased court trial, execution of death penalty, right? This is what they're indicating here. This is talking about these cards here are indicating about 2016. Them winning control of Congress and winning the White House in 2016. That is the past, right? But this is also going down to the 2020 election. And with him saying that, oh, there's a witch child, they're falsely accusing me and stuff like that. This is what this is here, which is why we had biased court trial come up for the Salem accusation. We had the line of succession. Biden moved, and the next one is Vice President Kamala Harris. However, it's not saying the line of succession is going to go to Vice President Kamala Harris, but what it is indicating to me here that, like I said earlier in either this video or the previous video before this, the part one, what they call it is telling me here that there's going to be an open vacancy to the Supreme Court in time when this Supreme Court case is ongoing. We do have here drug and alcohol addiction, crack or heroin, opioid, and vape pen. I don't know why drugs come up here, so that might be a significant thing. We do have here reverse electoral college margin. Again, we have food industry. We have animal abuse, GMOs and other chemicals, and quality and length of life. Interesting. So what it is telling me here is what does the Supreme Court role play in whether or not Donald Trump is disqualified or not. What this is indicating to me here is that if I was to read this and kind of get more of the context of what's going on here, this is telling me this is referring back to 2016 and stuff like that. 2016 was the result, and the 2020 election and how Donald Trump claimed that he won. Then we have here the issue of Donald Trump saying that he's being falsely accused and held accountable for something that is not his fault. We have here the line of succession that Biden, is too old to serve. Right? Then we have here the crack and heroin, opioids, vape pen, drug and alcohol addiction. There's some sort of shady dealing going on within the Supreme Court. Again, this is just for entertainment purposes only. Then we do have animal abuse, but also at the same time, they were to just make their decision. The Supreme Court is going to determine whether or not Donald Trump is disqualified or not by the quality and length of life. And the reason for that is being indicated here is that, hey, to say, well, if I give up my power, and just I give up my power as Supreme Court Justice, I don't have any say over the executive, which basically means that what I say can be overwritten. But if I go against Trump and my loyalty, Donald Trump will only exist for such a short period of time. He will almost leave advantage. So what they're saying here, their mindset here is, well, they're questioning loyalty at that point. They're saying, well, if I am loyal to Donald Trump, he may not live long enough for me to gain as much as I could from him. So if anything, I might just disqualify him on the simple basis that he's too old, that I don't expect him to live as long, and that could be what the mindset is behind that. Now we do have the 5 cups of vote. And the 5 cups of vote is the 3-time Donald Trump ran for president. And there's going to be 2 more times you're going to try again. There's going to be 2 more times. You already know we're seeing it again, But it's going to be really interesting to see how that will play out. Now, we do have the page of Pentacles, and the page of Pentacles is really indicating power to me. So what does the Supreme Court matter, and what play did they play? What kind of role do they play in it? Is that they care more about money. Well, wherever the money is, they're going to follow that. So if they can get more money, they're going to go after that. So it's more about power and money. We do have here the Ace of Cups reversed. And Ace of Cups reversed, when I saw that card, I automatically heard, well, these Supreme Court justices do not get voted in by the electorate. The electorate does not, or voters do not allow or elect the Supreme Court justices. So they're like, well, we don't need to represent the popular vote. We don't need to represent what the populace want. We represent what we want, and there's nothing nobody can do about it. And that is what is being thought about here. So they're really contemplating whether or not they want to get rid of Donald Trump's loyalty, but at the same time, they're contemplating money, power, the ability, the fact that no one's going to stop them. That's how powerful the Supreme Court justice is at the moment. And then we do have the Magician card. And the Magician card is upright. And what that indicates is power. They're going to make their final decision whether or not Donald Trump is disqualified from the 2024 presidential election. And the decision that they decide, well, I hate to leave us all on a cliffhanger here, but we have the Wheel of Pentacles. Wheel of Pentacles, my God. The Wheel of Fortune, excuse me. It's reversed. And what that indicates to me is, well, we shall find out what the results will be. It's too early to tell. Like I said, I'm contemplating on a lot of decisions, which means they can go really either way. Remember, there is going to be an open vacancy, so that also changes everything. So that's why they can't make a final decision at this moment. So in terms of what the Supreme Court role and what kind of play they are going to do in terms of the disqualification of Trump, well, we'll see how it plays out. It's really the end in. So if you like this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the bell icon, and I will see you guys in the next video. Until then, I love you guys, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye.